Morning. Hola, morning. Just waiting for my oven to come up to the heat that I need it to. It's at 367 now. practice that one for sure. I'm gonna put my first batch in. I just put the honey in the water. It's almost come to a boil. My oven's almost at temperature. There we go, we got our first batch in the oven. Or in the pot, I mean, sorry. It should take around 5 to 7 minutes to cook. I've never timed it, so I actually don't know. What should I play? Hamlin Towns in Brunswick, my famous Hanover city. The river Weser, deep and wide, washes its wall on the southern side. A pleasanter spot you never spied, but when begins my ditty, almost 500 years ago, to see the townsfolk suffer so from vermin was a pity. Rats, they fought the dogs and killed the cats, and bit the babies in the cradles, and ate the cheeses from the vats, and licked the soup from the cook's own ladles. Split open the kegs of salted sprats, they nested in the men's Sunday hats, and even spoiled the women's chat by drowning out their speaking with shrieking and squeaking in 50 different sharps and flats. At last, people in a body to the town hall came flocking. "'Tis clear," cried they, "our mayor is a naughty, and as for our corporation, shocking, think we buy gowns lined with ermine, for dolts who can't or won't determine what's best to rid us of our vermin. You hope because you're old and obese to find the phrase in a grove's ease. Rouse up, sirs, give your brains a racking, to find the remedy we are lacking, or sure as fate will send you packing." At this, the mayor and corporation quaked with mighty consternation. An hour they sat in council. At length the mayor broke silence. "For a gilder I'd my ermine gown sell, I wish I were a mile hence. It's easy to bid one rack one's brain. I'm sure my poor head aches again. I scratch it so, but all in vain. Oh, for a trap, a trap, a trap. Just as he said this, what should hap? At the chamber door, but a gentle tap. Bless us, cried the mayor, what's that? With the corporation as he sat, looking little through wondrous fat. Nor brighter were his eyes, nor moister than a too long opened oyster. Save when at noon his paunch grew mutinous for a plate of turtle green and glutinous. Only a scraping of shoes on a mat, anything like the sound of a rat makes my heart go pit-a-pat. Come in, cried the mayor, looking bigger, and in did come the strangest figure. His long clear coat from heel to head was half yellow and half red, and he himself was tall and thin, with sharp blue eyes loose like a pin, and light loose hair and swarthy skin, nor tuft of hair on cheek nor beard on chin, but lips a smile went out and in. There was no guessing his kith or kin, and nobody could enough admire this tall man in his quaint attire. Quoth one, it's as my great-grandsire, starting up at the trump of doom's tone, had walked this way from his painted tombstone. He advanced towards the council table, and please, your honor, said he, I am able, by means of secret charm to draw all the creatures living beneath the sun, that crawl or swim or fly or run, after me so as you never saw. And I chiefly use my charm on creatures that do people harm, mole and toad and newt and viper. People call me the Pied Piper. And here they notice round his neck a scarf of red and yellow stripe, to match with his coat of self-same check. And on scarf's end hung a pipe. His fingers, they noticed, were ever straying, as if impatient to be playing upon this pipe, as low it dangled over his vesture so old-fangled. Yes, said he, Pied Piper as I am, in Tartary I fred the cam, last June from his huge swarms of gnats. I eased in Asia the Nizam of a monstrous brood of vampire bats. And as for what your brain bewilders, if I rid your town of rats, will you give me 1,000 guilders? 50,000 was the exclamation of an astonished mayor corporation. Into the street the piper stepped, smiling first a little smile, as if he knew what magic slept in his quiet pipe the while. Like a musical adept, blow his pipe, his lips he wrinkled, and green and blue his sharp eyes twinkled, like a candle flame where salt is sprinkled. And ere 3 shrill notes the pipe uttered, he heard as if an army muttered, and a muttering grew to a grumbling, and a grumbling grew to a mighty rumbling, and out of the houses came the rats tumbling, great rats, small rats, lean rats, brawny rats, brown rats, black rats, gray rats, tawny rats, grave old plotters, gay young friskers, fathers, mothers, uncles, cousins, cocking tails and pricking whiskers, families by tens and dozens, brothers, sisters, husbands, wives, followed the Pied Piper for their lives. From street to street he piped advancing, and step for step they followed dancing, until they came to the river Weser, wherein all plunged and perished, save one who stout as Julius Caesar, swam across and lived to carry, as he the manuscript he cherished, to Ratland home his commentary, which was, at first shrill notes of the pipe, I heard a sound as of scraping tripe, putting apples wondrous ripe into the cider presses bright, and moving away a pickle tub boards, leaving a jar of conserve cupboards, and drawing the corks of train oil flasks, and the breaking hoops of butter casks. It seemed as if a voice, sweeter far than by harp or by psaltery of greed, called out, "Oh, rats, rejoice! The world is grown to a vast psaltery. So munch on, crunch on, take your nunch on, breakfast, supper, dinner, lunch on, and just a bulky sugar punch on, already staved like a great sun shone, gracious scarce an inch before me, just as methought it said come bore me, I found the Weser rolling over me. You should have heard the rambling people ring the bells, they rock the steeple. Go, cried the mayor, get long poles, poke out the nests and block up the holes, consult with carpenters and builders, and leave in our town not even a trace of the rats. When suddenly up the face of the piper perked to the marketplace, the first, if you please, my 1,000 guilders. 1,000 guilders. The mayor looked blue, so did the corporation too, for council dinners made rare havoc with claret, Moselle, vin de Grand Hock, and half the money would replenish with cellars big as butt of Rhenish, to pay this sum to a wondering fellow, with gypsy coat of red and yellow. Besides, quoth the mayor with a knowing wink, our business was done at the river's brink. We saw with our eyes the vermin sink. What's dead can't come to life, I think. So, friend, we're not folks to shrink from our duty of giving you something to drink, and a matter of money to put in your poke. But as for the guilders, what we spoke of them, as you well know, was a joke. Besides, our losses have made us thrifty. 1,000 guilders, come, take 50. The piper's face fell and he cried, no trifling, I can't wait beside. I promised to visit by dinner time Baghdad, except the prime of the head cook's potage. All he's rich in, having left in the caliph's kitchen, of a nest of scorpions no survivor. With him I proved no bargain driver. With you don't think I'll bait a stiver. When folks have put me in a passion, they find me pipe after another fashion. How, cried the mayor, do you think I brook, being worse treated than a cook, insulted by a rival, with idle pipe and vesture pliable? Threaten us, fellow, do your worst, blow your pipe there till you burst. Once more he stepped into the street, and to his lips again laid his long pipe, the smooth straight cane, and ere he blew 3 notes, such sweet soft notes as yet musicians coming never gave the enraptured air. There was a rustling that seemed like a bustling, a merry crowd jostling and pitching and hustling. Small feet were pattering, wooden shoes clattering, little hands clapping, little tongues chattering, like foals in the farmyard of barley is scattering. Out came the children running, all the little boys and girls, with rosy cheeks and flaxen curls, and sparkling eyes and teeth like pearls, tripping and skipping ran merrily after. The wonderful music was shouting and laughter. The mayor was dumb, and the council stood, as if they're changed the blocks of wood, unable to move a step or cry, to the children merrily skipping by. Could only follow with an eye a joyous crowd at the piper's back, and how the mayor was on the rack, and the wretched council's bosoms beat, as the piper turned from the high street, to where the Weser rolled its waters, rising the way of their sons and daughters. How he returned from south to west, into Copperberg Hill his steps addressed, and after him the children pressed. Great was the joy in every breast. He never crossed the mighty top, his voice let the piping drop, and we shall see our children stop. When lo, they reached the mountainside, a wondrous portal opened wide, as if a cavern was suddenly hollowed. The piper advanced, and the children followed. And when all were in to the very last, the door in the mountainside shut fast. Did I say all? No, one was lame, and could not dance a whole of the way. And in after years, if you blame his sadness, he was used to say, as dull on accounts to my playmates left, I can't forget that I'm bereft of all the pleasant sights to see, which the piper also promised me. For he led us, he said, to a joyous land, joining the town of just at hand, where waters gushed and fruit trees grew, and flowers put forth a fairer hue, and everything was strange and new. The sparrow was buried the peacock here, and her dogs outran our fellow deer, and honeybees had lost their stings, and horses were born with eagle's wings. And just as I became assured, my lame throat be speedily cured. The music stopped, and I stood still, found myself outside the hill, left behind against my will, to go now limping as before, and never hear of that country more. Alas, alas for Hamelin, that came into many a burgher's pate, a text which says that heaven's gate opes to the rich at as easy rate, as the needle's eye takes a camel in. The mayor sent east, west, north, and south, to offer the piper by word of mouth, wherever was men's lot to find him, silver and gold, whose hearts content, if only he'd return the way he went, and bring the children behind him. But when they saw 'twas lost endeavor, piper and dances were gone forever, they made a decree that lawyers never should think their records dated duly, if after the day of the month and year, these words do not as well appear. And so long after what happened here, on the 22nd of July, 1376, in a better memory fixed, the place of the children's last retreat, they called it the Pied Piper Street, where anyone playing pipe or tabor was sure for his future to lose his labor, where suffered they hostel or tavern, show up with mirth the street so solemn, and opposite the place of the cavern, they wrote the story on a column, and on great church window painted, the same to make the world acquainted, how their children were stolen away, and there it stands this very day. And I must not omit to say, that in Transylvania there is a tribe of alien people who ascribe the way and dress which their neighbors lay such stress, to their fathers and mothers having risen out of some subterranean prison, into which they were canned a long time ago in a mighty band, out of Hamlin towns and Brunswick land, but how or why they don't understand. So, Lily, let me and you be wipers of scores out with all men, especially pipers. And if they should pipe us free from rats and from mice, if we promise them aught, let us keep our promise. That was the Pied Piper of Hamelin. about to take my first batch out of the pot. I'm gonna dress them in sesame seeds. Nice clean, straight boards. Happy about that. Tell you a story. This one's called Roland Pine and the Oven Blade. There was once a young man named Roland Pine who played the recorder when he wasn't baking bagels. One day he was walking through a park and playing his recorder to rest him off from all his baking when suddenly he spied a corpse lying on the ground beneath a swarm of flies. He put down his recorder, walked over to the corpse, shooed the flies away, and covered the dead man with stones. Returning to his oven later that day, he found that his oven blade had gone on by itself and already baked half the bagels he needed. From that day on, Roland Pine was the happiest baker alive. He'd bake until he was tired, and he'd pull his recorder out of his pocket while his oven blade went on by itself. But Roland Pine lived in a town whose mayor did not admire his skill and was jealous of his fame. So the mayor devised a plan to rid the town of Roland. In the beginning, he said that Roland baked a whole lot, but badly. Was good worker, but lazy. Next, he said that Roland baked a whole lot, badly. Then he accused Roland of being a sorcerer, and the people turned on him. Therefore, Roland Pine took his recorder and left his home behind. When Roland Pine came to a neighboring town, he went to all the business owners, but none of them would give him any work. Finally, he met an old busker and asked him to work to keep body and mind together. "Come along with me," said the old man, "and we will share alms." So Roland Pine and the old man started going around and singing, "Baker, why do you bear those silent things? Baker, how did you forget to stand where your feet are? Baker, no woman loves your wealth, although it is golden and good for her health. Baker, you are too dirty for a lover to wish to preen. Your limbs are the knots and cords of an old-fashioned machine. Baker, line the rings and bash the boards. You don't need their applause for a thing that is yours. You are a baker and are what you are, not by a miracle, but by the work of your arms. Baker, be who you are." Everybody gave alms to the old man, but to Roland they said, "What is a young man like you out begging? Why don't you work for a living?" "Nobody will hire me," replied Roland Pine. "That's what you say. There's a king with so many hungry soldiers that he'll pay good wages to anyone willing to feed them." So Roland Pine went to the king's kitchen and took the old man whose alms he'd been sharing. The oven had never been used by anyone. Roland mixed the dough, then he rolled it into rings, then he boiled them, dressed them with seeds, and baked them until they're golden brown. Then he tossed them into a crate to cool down. Whenever Roland wearied of baking, he would play his recorder, and once he was weary of playing his recorder, he would sing, "Baker, why do you bear those silent things? Baker, how did you forget to stand where your feet are? Baker, no woman loves your wealth, although it is golden and good for her health. Baker, you are too dirty for a lover to wish to preen. Your limbs are the knots and cords of an old-fashioned machine. Baker, line the rings and bash the boards. You don't need their applause for a thing that is yours. You are a baker and are what you are, not by a miracle, but by the work of your arms. Baker, be who you are." Hearing the singing of Princess looked out the window. She saw Roland Pye and fell in love with him. But she was a princess and he a baker. The king would never consent to their marriage. So they decided to run away together. They fled at night in a boat. When they were already on the high seas, Roland remembered the busker. He said to his beloved, "We must fetch the old man. Since he shared his alms with me, we can't go off and leave him like that." At that very moment, the old man came up behind the boat, walking on the water as though it had been dry land. Reaching the boat, he said, "We agreed to divide everything we had, and I shared everything I own. Now you have the king's daughter. You must give half of her to me." At this, he gave Roland Pye the knife to cut his bride in two. Roland Pye took the knife with a trembling hand. "You are right," he said. "You are perfectly right." He was on the point of cutting his bride in two, when suddenly the old man stopped him. "Stop! I knew you were a just man. I'm the dead man, mind you, whom you covered with stones. Go now, and may the two of you always be happy." The old man walked away on the waves. The boat came to an island rich in all good things, with a princely palace awaiting the newlyweds. That was Roland Pye in the oven blade. Snappy seeds, you know, snappy seeds. It always happens on the first batch. You really hear it. Because the deck is super hot right now. recite another poem. This one is a child rolling to a dark tower came by Robert Browning. My first thought was he lied in every word, that hoary cripple with malicious eye, askance to watch the working of his lie on mine, and most scarce able to afford suppression of the glebe it pursed and scored its edge at one more victim gained thereby. What else should he be set for with his staff? What saved to waylay with his lies and snare all travelers who might find him posted there? And asked the road, I guessed what skull like laugh would break, what crutch can write my epitaph for pastime in the dusty thoroughfare. If at his counsel I should turn aside into ominous track which all agree hides the dark tower, in acquiescingly I did turn as appointed, neither pride nor hope rekindling at the end described, so much as gladness some end might be. For what with my whole world wide wondering, what with my search drawn out through years, my hope dwindled into a ghost not fit to cope with that obstreperous joy success would bring. I hardly try now to rebuke the spring my heart made finding failure in its scope. As a sick man very near to death seems dead indeed, and feels begin and end the tears, and takes farewell of each friend, and hears one bid the other go, draw breath freely outside, since all is over, he saith, and the blow fallen no grieving can amend. While some discuss the fear of the grave, be remembered after this, and when a day suits best for carrying the corpse away, with terrible banners, scarfs, and staves, and still the man hears all and only craves, may not shame such tender love and stay. Thus I had for so long suffered in this quest, heard failure prophesied so oft be writ, so many times among the band of wit, the knights who to dark towers searched to rest their steps, that just to fail as they seemed best, and all doubt was now should I be fit. So quiet as despair I turned from him, the hateful cripple, onto his highway into the path he pointed. All the day had been a dreary one at best, and dim was settling into its close, yet shot one grim red beard to see the plain catch its spray. For mark, no sooner was I fairly found, pledged the plain after pace or two, than pausing to row backward a last view, over the safe road 'twas gone, grey plain all round, nothing but plain to the horizon's bound. I must go on, naught else remained to do. So on I went. I think I never saw such starved ignoble nature. Nothing throve, for flowers as well expect a cedar grove. But chortle and spurge, according to their law, might propagate their kind with none to awe. You think a bird had been a treasure trove. No, Penry, inertness in grimace, in some strange sort were the land's portion. See or close your eyes, said nature peevishly. In nothing skills, I can't help my case. 'Tis last judgment's fire must cure this place. Calcine its clod and set my prisoners free. If there pushed any ragged thistle stalk above its mates, its head was chopped. The bents were jealous elves, what made the holes and rents in the dock's harsh swords leaves. Roses to balk all hope of greenness. 'Tis a brute must walk, passing their life with the brute's intents. As for the grass, it grew as scarce as hair and leprosy. Thin, dried blades pricked the mud, which underneath looked kneaded up with blood. One stiff, blind horse, as every bone was stared, stood stupefied however he came there, thrust out past service from the devil's stud. Alive, he might be dead for aught I know, with red, gaunt, and callop neck astrain, and shut eyes beneath the rusty mane. Seldom went such grotesqueness with such woe. I never saw a brute I hated so. He must have been wicked to deserve such pain. I shut my eyes and turned them on my heart. As a man calls for wine before he fights, I asked one draught of earlier, happier sights. Ere fitly I can hope to play the part. Think first, fight afterwards, the soldier's art. One taste of old times sets all to rights. Not it. I fancied Cuthbert's rending face beneath its garniture of curly gold. Dear fellow, till I almost felt him fold. An arm and mind to fix me to that place. The way he used, alas, one night's disgrace. How wet my heart's been fire and left me cold. Giles, then, the soul of honor, there he stands, frank as 10 years ago when knighted first. An honest man should dare, he said he durst. Good but the scene shifts, fought when hangman's hand into his breast department. His own bandery did poor traitor spit upon and cursed. Better this present than past like that. Back therefore is my darkening path. No sound, no sight as far as the eye can strain. Will the night send a howl or a bat, I asked, when something on the dismal flat came to arrest my thoughts and change their train. A sudden little river crossed my path, as unexpected as a serpent came. No tides congenial to the glooms. This as it frothed by might have been a bath of the fiend's glowing goof. To see the wrath of its black eddies be spat with flakes and spumes. So petty yet so spiteful, all along those scrubby alders kneeled over it. Drenched willows flung them headlong in a fit of rough despair, a suicidal throng. The river which had done them all the wrong, whatever that was, rolled by, deterred no whit. Which while I forded, good saints, how I feared to set my foot upon the dead man's cheek. Each step or field of spear I thrust to seek, for hollows tangled in his hair or beard. It may have been a water rat I speared, but ugh, it sounded like a baby shriek. Glad was I to reach the other bank, now for a better country. Famed message, who are the strugglers? What war did they wage? Whose savage trample could thus pad the dank soil to a flash? Toads in a poison tank, wild cats in a red-hot cage. The fight most so have seemed in that foul cert. What kept them there with all the plain to choose? No footsteps leading to that horrid muse. None out of it. Mad Druids set to work, their brains no doubt like galley slaves a Turk. Pits for his pastime Christians against Jews. And more than that, a furlong on, why there? What bad use was that engine for? That wheel, or break not wheel, that hero fit to reel men's bodies out like silk. With all the air of Tophet's tool, on earth left unaware, brought to sharpen its rusty teeth of steel. Then came some scuff ground, once of wood, next to marsh it would seem, now near earth, desperate and done with, so the fool finds mirth, makes a thing and mars it, till his groove changes and off he goes, within a rude bog-clay marsh, sand and stark black dirt. Now blotches rankling colored gay and grim, now patches where some meanness of the soils broke into moss or substances like oils. Then came a palsied oak, a cleft in him, a distorted mouth that splits its rim, gaping at death and dies while it recoils. As far as ever from the end, not in the distance but the evening odd, point my footsteps further at the thought, the great black bird, Apollyon's bosom's friend, sailed past or beat his wide wings dragon penned. It brushed my cap, perchance the guide I sought. For looking up where I somehow grew, the plain had given place all round to mountains with such names to grace mere heights and deeps now stolen in view. How thus they surprised me solving you. How to get from there was no clear case. Yet half I seem to recognize some trick of mischief had happened to me, God knows when, in a bad dream perhaps. Here ended then progress this way, when in the very nick of giving up one more time, came a click as when the traptions are in the den. Burningly it came upon me all at once, this was the place, those two hills crouched like two bulls on horn in fight, while to the left a tall scalp mountain, Dunce doddered a dozing at the very nuts after a lifetime of training for the sight. What in the midst lay but the tower itself, the round squat turret, blinds the fool's heart, built of brown stone found a counterpart in the whole world. The tempest mocking elf points the ship in dusty and unseen shelf. She strikes on only when timbers start. Not see, because of night perhaps, why day came back to that. Behind it left the dying sunset, kindled to a cleft. The hills like two giants in the hunting lay, chin upon hand to see the game at bay, a stab and end the creature to the heft. Not here, when noise was everywhere, it told, increasing like a bell, names in my ears, of lost adventurers, my peers, how such was strong, and such was bold, and such was fortunate, yet each of old, lost, one moment now the woe of years. There they stood, ranged along the hillside met, to view the last of me, a living frame, for one more picture, a sheet of flame. I saw them and knew them all, and yet, dauntless a slughorn to my lips I set and blew, child Rowan to a dark tower came. There was once a rich man who had just one son, and the boy was dearly loved by his father. As everybody knows, the greatest scourge on earth for a rich man is work. Therefore, when his son turned 14, his father decided to send him to school to learn the science of laziness. On the same street as the father, there lived a famous and highly respected professor who had never done a lick of work in his life that he could get out of doing. The rich man called on him and found him stretched out in the garden beneath the fig tree. Before talking to him, I must first see how he does, said the rich man to himself, and he hid behind a hedge to observe the man. The professor lay as still as a corpse with his eyes closed. The only time he stirred was whenever he heard the sound of a fig falling on the ground, ripe fig falling on the ground near where he lay. He'd reach slowly out and bring the fruit to his mouth. And swallow it. Then he wouldn't stir again until another fig fell. This is just the professor my son needs, decided the rich man. He came out from his hiding place, introduced himself, and asked the professor if he would teach his son the science of laziness. Old man, answered the professor just above a whisper. Don't talk so much. It tires me to listen to you. If you want to bring your son up to be as you and I are, just send him to me. So the rich man went home, took his son by the hand, thrust a feathered pillow under his arm, and led him to the garden. I urge you, he told him, to do everything you see this professor of idleness do. The boy, who already had an inclination for that particular science, also stretched out under the fig tree. Observing his teacher, he saw him reach for every fig that fell, and bring it to his mouth. Why should I work myself to death reaching for figs, he thought. And he lay there with his mouth wide open. Soon a fig fell into his mouth, and he let it go down slowly. Then he reopened his mouth. Another fig fell. This time it missed. He lay there perfectly still and murmured, Fig, why so wide of the mark? Why so wide of the mark? Fig fall into my mouth. Seeing how wise his pupil already was, the professor said, Go on now. You have nothing to learn from me. You can even teach me something. So the boy went home to his father, who thanked heaven for having given him such a smart son. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them to another, and assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal stations to which the laws of nature and nature's God entitle them, a decent respect of the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. Behold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And to secure these rights, governments instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. And whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it, and institute new government, laying its foundations on such principles, and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light or transient causes. And experience accordingly has shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer when evils are sufferable than right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they have become accustomed. But when long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces the design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is the necessity which impels them, such is the necessity that constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. These refuse assent to laws the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. beauty of woman and a wise heart's words. Men-at-arms and their nobility, the colloquies of love, the songs of birds, and handsome ships upon the fast-running sea. The calmness of air as daybreak looms, and white snow falling on a windless day. A flowing brook, a meadow full of blooms, silver and gold and lapis in array. The heart asks pleasure first, and then knows. The heart asks pleasure first, and then excuse from pain, and then knows little anodynes of dead and suffering, and then to go to sleep, and then if it should be the will of its inquisitor, liberty to die. Hey, welcome. Sorry, I can't really see the text boxes from here. My camera's too far away from me. My screen is too far away from me, I should say. What do I need? I need to get something. I just need to get something back. Really back here. Malcolm. I've baked one batch of bagels so far. So I currently have 2 batches in the oven and 1 in the pot, and 1 that is out of the oven in a crate. Let them soften up a bit. already. Thanks for watching. Have a great morning.